Previously on the Top 100.
Stabler's back to throw, and it is intercepted. An interception by Jack Ham.
He got up, clenched his fist, turned around, punched this guy right through the face mask. No one wanted to mess with Iron Mike.
Kind of imagine John Riggins in a leather helmet. That's what Steve Van Buren was.
Nobody played it with more passion than Mike Singletary.
We're gonna be here all day, baby! I like this kind of party!
I watched him become one of the greatest offensive linemen in the league.
We should run down these guys' throat.
He came on the scene, he was a star. He was great from day one.
I have to really get ready to play a guy like Forrest. You look at some of his tapes, and you'll see a fundamentally sound tackle. And that's what put him in camp.
He would hurt you when he hit you.
Ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
They come up the middle. Dickerson breaks to the 40, 35, 30, 15. He's down to the 10. 5. Touchdown.
Bart Starr has justifiably been lumped with the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
And now the countdown continues.
Did I think he lit it up off the field? No, he always seemed a little socially awkward. When he got on the field, was he a killer? Were they afraid of him? You're damn right they were.
This is the story of the quarterback who came in from the cold. The first overall pick of the 1970 draft, Terry Bradshaw had to overcome the struggles of being a young quarterback, withering criticism from Steelers coach Chuck Noll and the Pittsburgh press, even questions about his intelligence.
He was a bit of a delicate personality, Bradshaw. Tough guy on the field, a beast, but, you know, he had some insecurities.
Don't go out to the restaurants that I used to frequent. Don't read the newspapers because they're going to say bad things about you. So you're crushed a little bit there.
He isn't stupid. You watch him on Fox. He's stupid like a fox.
The resentment and the anger I had for being called dumb and booed and pushed in and out of the lineup, you learn to use it as a tool.
Sometimes the easiest place to be is in the crucible. All the bullshit falls away. All the crap of you answering questions. At the end of the day, when you're back in that pocket and you got Jack Youngblood flying past your head at the speed of light, it is the most peaceful place you can be, because it's bing, bang. Was it best for him to get out of his own head and just use the fact that he was like the javelin champion of the United States for like 10 years? Yeah, the guy had a freaking gun. It's one of the 5 best guns that ever played the game. It's Namath, it's Elway, it's Marino. The bing bang of it, see receiver, throw receiver. Throw deep, baby. That's my memory of Bradshaw, is when he got in a bind. You better have your cup on, man, because it was coming in at Nolie Ryan speed.
On the field, he found sanctuary. In his arm and his anger, he found strength. But only on football's biggest stage did Terry Bradshaw find redemption and joy.
If God would come down right now, Terry, what can I do for you? Put me back in one Super Bowl. Let me hear my name over the loudspeaker. Let me hear the roar of the crowd. Bradshaw, Bradshaw. And put me on the 1 foot line and give me 2 minutes to go and give me all 3 of my timeouts and give me my boys. Let me get in and call plays, see the eyes grow as I call these plays and talk to them. Let me feel the hair on my back crawl up. I mean, that's what the Super Bowl does to you.
Bradshaw's Steelers won 4 Super Bowls. He was the MVP in 2 of them.
Getting dinged against the Cowboys and throwing that past the Swanee was a pretty beautiful play.
Here is Bradshaw. Glenn Swan is open. Got it. Steeler touchdown.
He breaks pocket just a little, buys himself a second, and then the beastie throw right on the Swanee for it all. I mean, that's beautiful stuff.
In every fourth quarter of every Super Bowl, I came through with a big play. Go to Super Bowl 14 and take that touchdown pass at the end of the game to John Stallworth. That's who I am.
He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
We all show up at jobs where we don't necessarily dig who we're working for at certain points in our life. Turns out it was a perfect marriage because the proof's in the pudding. The guy's got more rings than a married pimp. And you know something? That's what matters at the end of the day.
In the last 35 years in the National Football League that I know the league, Mike Haynes is the best corner. Mike could play deep if he had to. He could play tight bump. He could play off bump. He did everything. I like to say that a great player will have 2 or 3 qualities that set him above everything else, but there's usually a quality or 2 that they're not quite good at. Haynes had no flaws. You couldn't find him. Ask him to be physical. He'd do it. Ask him to blitz. He could do it. You wasted him if you did that because he could cover anybody. And he would just mirror you, just mirror your steps. He could shut a guy down all by himself. Those guys you can't find. They're just rare freaks of nature.
After 7 seasons in New England, Mike Haynes joined the Los Angeles Raiders in November of 1983. He wore the silver and black until 1989 and was twice named an All-Pro.
Mike was like the gentleman Raider. He was kind of outside the mold of what the Raiders are supposed to be on and off the field. Mike was a please and thank you guy. He didn't make any noise about anything. He just played. But when he steps out onto the field and he shuts everything down, we didn't care. We didn't care if you sell pink flowers. Knock yourself out.
Really a tough position. You have to like a good challenge, and you have to understand that even though they beat you on this one play, that was just this one play. You need to be able to step back in the huddle and come back again with the same enthusiasm and passion and belief in yourself.
That 83 Raider team, I'll put that defense against anybody. Anybody. And the whole key was Mike Haynes.
Oakland's 1983 season culminated in Super Bowl 18. In that game, Haynes was instrumental in shutting down a Redskins team that at that time was the highest scoring team in NFL history.
This guy wasted no motion, nothing. Probably the most efficient player mechanically that I've ever watched. To me, he's the standard by which all corners are measured.
I tell you, there's a lot of things you can learn out on a football field. You learn how to take a good licking and not cry about it, and you learn how to hand one out and not go around bragging about it.
Not even Paul Bunyan's Blue Ox had a mythology greater than Harold Red Grange, whose life and times were fertile ground for many a tall tale.
During 13 years of high school, college, and professional football, Red Grange carried the ball 4,013 times for an average of 8.1 yards. and scored 531 touchdowns. His astonishing record still stands today.
Damon Runyon, who was a famous sports writer of the day, he said that Grange does the work of 3 men and a horse. Grange was the greatest broken field runner of his time. Fielding Yost, the longtime head coach, University of Michigan, had a disparaging remark about Grange. He said, all Grange can do is run. To which Bob Zuppke, the Illinois coach, responded, invoking the name of a famous opera singer of the day, all Galli-Curci can do is sing. But his place among the greatest players in NFL history has to do more with the stability that he brought to the league.
Well, when I came into pro football in the 20s, it was really a nothing game. I took quite a beating in the press and from the different schools for joining pro football. Probably I would have been thought more of had I joined the Capone mob in Chicago instead of professional football. I remember President Coolidge greeting us, and the senator introduced us as George Halas and Red Grange with the Chicago Bears. And I remember President Calvin Coolidge's remark. He said, young men, I'm glad to know you. He said, I always like animal acts.
The Iceman from Wheaton, Illinois, soon had his anonymity melt away. Red Grange's skills made him a star. Then his legend grew as fast as his list of endorsements.
Candy bars, cigarettes, a fountain pen, a doll. He was in movies. It doesn't hurt to have a good nickname. And the Galloping Ghost has to be one of the best nicknames any football player has ever had. He was so big that even 50 years after he last carried the ball, his name still resounded in the sports world. It evokes an era when the films that were made of football games weren't of great quality. They had sort of that ghost-like look to them. They weren't quite sure who was who until one guy would emerge from the pack, running away from everybody else for the touchdown. Oh, that's Grange. That's Grange right there.
I think probably Raymond had the greatest journey in life during his football career of anyone I've ever known about. He lost his father when he was 3, lost his mother when he was 11, so kind of grew up a little bit tough on the streets of Chicago, and was kind of, in a certain way, like a junkyard dog. Coach would get up on the tower once in a while to watch practice. He happened to be on the field behind the offense at this time, and Ray was over by the tower, and a wind came up, pretty significant wind, strong enough to blow the tower over. And actually a bolt from the tower penetrated Ray's helmet, and he was trapped under the tower. And Coach Lombardi said, somebody's under the tower, who is that? And he came running over there, and it's Nitschke. Oh, hell, it's only Nitschke, he'll be all right.
Ray Nitschke's a big, rough, belligerent, fun-loving guy with a heart as big as all outdoors, but he has been a bit of a problem to coach. When you chew him out, he's just like a child.
Ray Nitschke was a rookie in 1958, and right away he made a name for himself. But it wasn't the name he wanted.
Everybody called him the Judge, and he said, and we were talking one time, yeah, they call me the Judge. I spend so much time on the bench, they call me the Judge. Rah, rah, rah. So he was, the first couple of years in Green Bay, he was just nasty. I mean, just snarling at everybody, didn't trust anybody, didn't really fit in very well. And it didn't matter if you were in shorts and T-shirts, you always buckled your hat when you went close to Raymond, because he was going to hit you. Just happy to be there, I think, his first couple of years. But he got this desire to be perfect. And you can see him make tackles, and they weren't perfect. He'd get up and kick the ground and be upset with himself for not making a perfect tackle. So he developed a quest for perfection, I think, and excellence after a while.
I studied and I really prepared myself. I practiced hard. I was always ready. And there wasn't anything that came on the field that I wasn't prepared for.
He quit drinking. Then he found a woman that loved him. Then he found a team that loved him. And he was able to accept the love of that team and give it back. And Raymond became a totally different person off the field. He was the same junkyard dog on the field as he always was, but off the field, he was a beautiful human being. He turned into one of the most considerate, thoughtful, polite, caring, loving human beings I've ever known.
But if there is a player other teams love to hate, it's Ray Nitschke, number 66, Green Bay's all-pro middle linebacker.
Nitschke ultimately perfected both his game and his character. He began his career journey as a hellraiser and ended it as a testament to perseverance.
My desire to play every down like it's the last down. I think that's what it's all about. You can take away the fans and the bands and TV cameras, and I'd still go out there and play. Football's been very good to me, especially playing with the Packers, and I know it's made me a better father and a man.
Before the countdown continues, here's a look back at numbers 50 to 47. Number 50, the quarterback who led the Pittsburgh Steelers to 4 Super Bowl victories, Terry Bradshaw. Number 49, 9-time Pro Bowl cornerback, Mike Haynes. Number 48, the Galloping Ghost, Red Grange. Number 47, Ray Nitschke. And now, number 46.
I was shocked when I saw the first episode of Friday Night Lights, when that premiered. And when the quarterback is talking to a bunch of 5th and 6th graders, a kid asks him, "Are you going to be like Troy Aikman or Roger Staubach?" who retired about 20 years before this kid would have been born. It's almost like Staubach, he's the George Washington of cowboy quarterbacks. Roger Staubach was the first athlete that I ever loved or worshiped, whatever term you want to use. The idea of America's team, I really believed that. So of course, I'm going to love the best player on the country's best team. Tarkington was probably the best known scrambler, but Staubach's scrambling was much more aggressive to me, where instead of trying to flee guys, he seemed to actually enjoy the contact. Staubach was a fairly reckless player. I mean, that's part of the reason he got hurt so much. Even now I'm 38, I still think of him in the most classically heroic way. Because when you watched Cowboy games, even if they were behind by 14 or 17, it didn't really matter what the score was, there was a high likelihood that they would come back, because so much of their success was built around Staubach's ability to bring the team back.
In the 1972 divisional playoff, the former naval officer demonstrated why he earned the nickname Captain Comeback, throwing 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes. During an 11-year NFL career, Staubach led 15 fourth-quarter comeback victories, including this one that gave birth to the term Hail Mary.
Well, the Cowboys need a miracle. Roger takes the snap, pumps it once. He's going long. Down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5. Touchdown! What you believe it?
There's probably never been a better role model than Roger Staubach, certainly in sports. He seems like the best possible American you could create. If you dreamed of having a son, it would be like Staubach. He went to the Naval Academy, won the Heisman, he was awesome there. Then he goes and fights in an unwinnable war. He was very clear that he was a religious person. He went on the NFL Today and sort of bragged about how he has a great sex life, but only with his wife.
Everyone in the world compares me to Joe Namath, you know, as far as, you know, the idea of off the field. He's single, bachelor swinging, I'm married and family, and, you know, he's having all the fun. And, you know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl, you know. But it's still fun, you know, it's the same thing.
Part of the difference between Staubach and Namath, besides the obvious thing that Namath had the big sideburns and was a womanizer, is that just Namath was more image conscious than Staubach was. As a player, really comparing Staubach and Namath is crazy. Staubach was twice as good.
Staubach was the MVP in Super Bowl VI and played in 4 World Championship games. In Super Bowl XII, he won his 2nd ring.
Roger goes deep across the middle, way downfield, and Butch Johnson caught! Touchdown!
Staubach is arguably the best quarterback of the 70s. When he retired, he had the highest quarterback ranking at the time of all time. So he was technically the best passer in the history of the game.
I appreciate my teammates through the years because I'm one that's been successful in this system. It's been a lot of good ones. And there'll be many more good ones. But I thank the Cowboys, and I'm retired.
Aikman had more success than Staubach. I'm sure his career completion percentage is much higher because he was very accurate. I'm sure all his numbers are higher because he played at a time when it was more of a passing league. But I don't know if there'll ever be a point when people talk about the greatest Cowboys that Staubach isn't seen as their starting quarterback. There's no way anyone can be better than him because he kind of created the template for what being a great Cowboy quarterback is.
You start looking over some of the greats at the position, John Mackey, Ozzie Newsome, Mike Ditka, Kellen Winslow. I mean, you're talking about Hall of Fame guys. But I really think that Tony transformed the position. I think Tony's the best tight end ever. Put him in a normal tight end stance. He's going to run block. He's going to run his routes from that location. We'd put him on a single receiver side, move the other wide receivers to the other side of the field. That way we'd have a one-on-one matchup with a linebacker or a strong safety. His skill set was so different than any other tight end.
Tony Gonzalez double pass for Michael Ricks up the right side. Caught by Ricks down to the 5.
When you look at how we utilized him as a weapon, there's a lot of tight ends in the game today that are doing those things that we first started with Tony.
I'm gonna score, and I'm trying to every time. I turn around and I see defenders coming, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to at least let them know if you tackle me, it's gonna be hard. If one person tackles you, you haven't really done your job. Just like if one person's guarding you and you can't get open, there's something wrong with you. Maybe you shouldn't be out there.
I'm convinced if I didn't have this big foot, I'd break a lot of tackles. I'd have broke that last one. He had my foot like this, just one guy.
The thing you have to remember with Tony, he has that basketball background. When you throw to him, you could squeeze the ball into coverage with Tony because of how strong his hands were and because of his ability to box guys out.
Gonzalez catches it. Kirkland was in perfect position, but not for a California basketball player to come over the back and make the catch.
Tony is the guy that I would rely on those critical situations to throw the tough pass.
What a quarterback-friendly tight end.
Why not look for number 88 every time?
The visual that I get over and over again is him one-on-one or him in traffic, and I put the ball up high, whether it be in the corner of the end zone or a matchup down the sideline or somewhere over the middle where the linebacker can't reach up and get it, and he was going to get it.
Lost the corner, penalty, wants Gonzalez, who reaches up, touchdown!
Great going, buddy. Just great going. Yeah.
You're the best, and you will always be the best.
He's a dynamic receiver. Everybody knows that. There's no question of that. I think what everybody forgets is how his blocking transformed as he went along. You know, he was a part of that offensive line that helped Priest Holmes break the NFL single-season rushing touchdown record. I think Tony definitely deserves to be in the top 100. You have to put him in there, not only from a statistical standpoint, because he'll virtually own every tight end record once he retires, but just by the way he changed that position.
That's the NFL
That's the
record. His 97th reception of the season. It's an all-time record for receptions for a single season for tight ends.
It's not only a catch for Kansas City, it's a catch for Canton. His 63rd career touchdown catch, the most by any tight end in National Football League history.
Gonzalez has the hat trick. Most touchdowns, most catches, most receiving yards by a tight end in NFL history. He's the best tight end ever to play in this league. Absolutely.
Now, I know of very few players in the history of the NFL where the league changed the rules because one guy was too good at one thing, and eliminating a receiver on a play-by-play basis is what Mel Blount did. I know that Mel Blount was listed at something like 6'3", 205. I think that was a lie. I think he played the position probably at 6'3", 215, 220. Bigger than their middle linebacker, Jack Lambert. Certainly bigger than Jack Ham.
In 1975, Mel Blount led the league in interceptions and became the first cornerback to be named Defensive Player of the Year. For 14 seasons, he was an offense-crushing combination of raw talent and nasty temperament.
One of the things that I always wanted to do was let people know that this is my territory. If you come in here, you're going to have to pay.
It was my good fortune or bad fortune to face that bunch twice a year. Lucky, lucky me.
Second down and 11.
There was a particular play on a Monday night game. And then I don't remember anything.
Let's look at it again. The defensive coverage sandwiches Bob Trumpy.
I wore contact lenses, and he knocked one of my contact lenses off. And I look around a little bit, and geez, I've been blinded. I didn't remember the play until we saw it on tape, but I still carry the scar. We'd go into the game thinking that we could get the ball to our wide receivers. And after the game, we'd watch the tape, and our wide receiver on Mel Blount's side would be in the concession stand. I mean, that's how far he shoved him. Everybody complained about what Pittsburgh was doing because Mel Blount was doing it so well. And that's why the league had to come up with the Mel Blount rule. You know, you get 5 yards, you can give one chuck, and then you got to let him alone. Because, seriously, it was like we were playing with 10 guys on offense.
Even after the Mel Blount rule forced NFL defenses into using more zone coverage, Mel Blount's presence continued to force offenses to throw away from his side of the field.
People just were not going over there. And I don't know if you can pay anybody a higher compliment.
Still, Pittsburgh's king-sized cover man found the ball and dominated games, helping the Steelers to victory in 4 Super Bowls.
Staubach is back deep, and he winds up and throws. Intercepted by Blount at the 20.
They had a receiver-stuffing cornerback who would also tackle. They can eliminate one half of the field, basically. He was that strong. He was that good at what he did.
I grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota. Everybody in my neighborhood playing football in the backyard had Vikings jerseys, but they were all number 10, Fran Tarkenton, number 44, Chuck Foreman. My parents had to get me a purple shirt and iron on 2 88s. I had the only Alan Page jersey in the neighborhood. It was moth-eaten. My mother was mortified to send me out of the house with it. And when I was in second grade, my friend Troy, his father managed the Holiday Inn in Bloomington. And everybody knew that Saturday night before home games, the Vikings stayed there. I got to the Holiday Inn, and Troy's dad told me, Alan Page doesn't sign autographs. And it just crushed me. I couldn't believe it. And then so the doors opened, and all of a sudden Alan Page blew past me, turned as if he'd forgotten to pick up his room key or something, came back, saw this kid in his 88 jersey trembling, and he put his hand on my head as if he were palming a grapefruit or something, tousled my hair, I had some then, picked up my spiral notebook and my Bic banana, signed his beautiful autograph, handed the thing back to me, and then went back and disappeared up the stairwell, and I just stood there shaking in this pool of admiration and probably urine as well. 25 years after that, when I told Page this story of my seeking the autograph from him and my having that only threadbare Alan Page jersey, a few months later, in the mail, I get a 3/4 sleeve white 88 jersey that he had signed to me and said, "This is to replace that jersey that you lost when you were 8." I can count on one hand the number of interview subjects that I've gotten a handwritten note from afterwards.
Alan Page was born and raised in Canton, Ohio. As a teenager, he worked in construction and helped build the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In 1988, he was enshrined there. But nothing else about Alan Page followed a direct path.
He revolutionized the defensive tackle position. When he came in, he said the coaches wanted him to kind of man this 1 square yard of space, his lane. He never found that particularly interesting. And so you'd see him going through all different kinds of gaps. You'd see him swimming around 2 defenders at the same time. You'd see him pulling different colored jerseys down, and maybe one of those guys had the ball and he'll sort it out afterwards. He looked just huge in uniform with those pads on. But out of uniform, he's a fairly skinny guy. He's run 1,000 marathons. You would not think that he was one of the greatest players in the history of the National Football League.
Page is the only defensive lineman ever to be named league MVP. Relentless and at times even volatile on the field. Mild-mannered and cerebral off of it. He was a ferocious competitor, but cared little about his one career failing, never winning a Super Bowl.
It's just, it's another football game. I suppose if it were more than that, if it were the end of the world, the spectacular that it's made out to be, then I'd be somewhat more concerned about, winning or losing. Come Monday morning, I'm going to be on my way back to Minnesota to law school. And Tuesday morning when I'm in class, I'm just going to be like everybody else sitting there in class. It's not going to be that big a deal.
He was studying law in the locker room as an NFL player. Had this notion of becoming a lawyer since he was a kid, and football stardom, unusual for a lot of athletes, didn't interest him. He thought it was kind of silly that people thought he was better than other people because he could play football, and that's one of the reasons he didn't sign autographs for a long time, was because he didn't feel like, I'm somebody that you should think is special just because I play football.
The man who once ruled the middle of the greatest defense in Vikings history would go on to become a judge on the Minnesota Supreme Court.
He doesn't have a single football memento in his office. He has a lot of mementos about Jim Crow and things that remind him of the power lawmakers and judges and courts and the legal system can have in people's lives and in changing society. And I think that's what he's most proud of, and that's the source of his greatest accomplishment.
I was PR director. I was a young kid, so when I got there, I'm naturally in awe. There was a magnetism to Mackey. When you were around him, he excited you. Mackey was faster than anybody. He was the speed of a wide receiver. He was explosive in the open field. It wasn't a matter of eluding. It was a matter of running over those defensive backs.
For a quick hopper to John Mackey, and watch him shed tacklers. All of a sudden, he's got daylight, and the Bears will not catch him.
He wasn't a big, tall, angular guy like Kellen Winslow. He was a compact, powerful guy. And he could outrun a lot of defensive backs, but if there was a back there, rather than even waste his time getting around him, he'd slow down and run right over him. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw him do that.
I decided that the only thing you can do is to just try to hurt someone. It was to play when I ran over the 9 guys against Detroit, and I caught that diagonal pass, and when I turned up, it's like the whole team came over there. And I just closed my eyes and rammed into it and came right through it.
For 10 NFL seasons, John Mackey's brute power and breakaway speed terrorized opposing defenses while providing a dependable safety net for his legendary quarterback.
Well, I said to draw, that might have helped him. Is he open on it too?
No, I wasn't open. No, I'm just saying that I can beat my man on the R going to the inside because he's playing a little bit to the outside, giving that like a quick post.
As Unitas' career dwindled down at the end and he didn't quite have the arm strength that he had when he was younger, Mackey really sustained his career because he could just throw a lot of those little slants to John Mackey, who would turn a 10-yard throw into a 60-yard touchdown, and I'm sure John was happy to have him. He didn't have great hands. He did a lot of body catching, but he didn't drop the ball, so it didn't make any difference how he caught it. I don't even remember him dropping a big pass. Probably better than anybody else in every other ingredient, whether it was speed, blocking, explosion, strength. More than anything, his leadership, and that was evidenced so much by he was a co-captain of the Colts, but he was also head of the Players Association. And it was during a time that we really had our first strike, 1970. It was a short strike, but our first strike.
John Mackey remains in Chicago, making every attempt to get in touch with the owners.
We have the leader of the Players Association on our team, and there was never a problem between him and management. I remember watching him in action at that time and thinking, wow, what a leader this guy is. This guy could lead any field that he really wanted to be in. I've never seen anyone quite like him. You almost have to take a combination of Winslow and some other modern-day tight ends to try to put all the characteristics into one package that he was. I've seen some great tight ends. Mackey was the most famous, and he was also the most spectacular. There's no question he defined a position.
Before the countdown continues, here's a look back at numbers 50 to 42. Number 50, Terry Bradshaw.
Here's Bradshaw. Lynn Swann is open. Got it. Steeler touchdown.
Number 49, Mike Haynes. Number 48, the man who helped legitimize pro football, Red Grange. Number 47, one of the most feared linebackers in NFL history, Ray Nitschke. Number 46.
Roger goes deep across the middle.
Roger Staubach.
Way downfield, and Butch Johnson caught. Touchdown!
Number 45, Tony Gonzalez.
What a day for Kansas City's brilliant tight end, Tony Gonzalez.
Number 44, the player who made the NFL change its rules, Mel Blount. Number 43, the Honorable Judge Alan Page. Number 42, John Mackey. And now, number 41.
I'll never forget 1987. Chuck Noll put Rod Woodson on the field. He was like a third-string defensive back. Who knew who Rod Woodson was? So they put him on the field, and then I think I promptly threw him an interception. And that was his first interception.
Picked off by Woodson. He's got green carpet. Rod Woodson goes all the way.
Who knew? at that moment that that kid was going to turn out to be one of the greatest all-time players. Defensive back is like a closer in baseball. You have to be fearless. And Rod had that personality where he was going to go for it.
Yoy and double yoy. What another big play by Rod Woodson.
I could easily create an argument for him being the greatest defensive back of all time.
Rod Woodson has just run back his 9th interception for a touchdown. That's an NFL record.
Rod became a great player at 3 different positions: cornerback, strong safety, and free safety. I don't think people realize just how great he was, but I think any quarterback that you talk to that played against him, they will all tell you that he's one of the great players of all time.
During his 17-year career, Rod Woodson had 71 interceptions, the 3rd most in NFL history, and became the all-time leader in interception return yardage and interceptions returned for touchdowns.
Within the framework of the game, the pick six is an important thing. Your mindset as a defensive back, when you get the ball in your hands, you try to take it back to the house. If you can do that, it makes yourself very valuable to the defense.
He made so many great plays, so many great punt returns, and I think a lot of people respected him because he was the total football player.
Woodson was so impressive after only 7 seasons that in 1994 he became the youngest player elected to the NFL's 75th anniversary team.
There are a lot of great cover corners, who we're talking about, who didn't like to tackle, but Rod never shied away from that.
Woodson, who came up and threw a blocker into Folk's path and knocked them both down.
He made tackles, interceptions, and was probably as athletic as any player who has ever played in the defensive backfield.
And few defensive backs were tougher. In 1995, Woodson became the first player in history to suffer a catastrophic knee injury and returned to play in the Super Bowl that same season.
We could talk about the great Gale Sayers, what he would have been if his knees don't blow out. Rod Woodson, you don't have to say what he would have been. We see what he turned out to be. Then to go to the Ravens and become, a part of that great defense.
Hollis rolling out, looking upfield, throws, it's picked off. Ravens intercepted, Woodson, touchdown.
Atta baby, Rod, we needed that.
And then to go to the Raiders and become a part of that defense.
Intercepted by Rod Woodson, 10, 15, 20, he may go.
3 different teams, were elevated because he was on the team. In my era, I would have to say he would be the best defensive back total that I've ever played against. And I would argue that maybe the greatest defensive back that ever played.
On the next episode of the Top 100.
He was so mentally tough. He had quickness, athletic ability, grace.
It was a crack. He said it sounded like an axe splitting a piece of wood.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs, have some fun.
You rarely see a guy this gifted work this hard.